Hi, Bridget.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm all right. And yourself?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
How are things there? I see you have this. Are you going to a conference or tell me about this project?
Yeah, so the University of Rochester, which is connected to
Yeah.
the music school where I studied, is hosting a exciting conference about um, it's called Arts and Change. So I think it's really kind of meeting the moment that we're experiencing now socially, especially in the United States, in the way that the conference is designed to cover the important topics of diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, and how this can actually um, come to fruition in the arts, not just in
Wonderful. Yeah.
performances, but also in our processes and in the way that we work and teach and plan and coordinate. And it's a very exciting uh, lineup, I think. So
Yeah, I think it is amazing. And I've been also talking to artists about the fact that art, I think you and I also spoke about that, the importance of art for children and
Mhm.
for music, learning music. And you told about how you started in music as well. So
Mhm.
I think it's amazing that these things are talked about now.
Yes, I do too. And it's if you look at the lineup of the conference, it's exciting because yeah, there are topics about that, about education. And I think there's even one workshop that's just something like how to have conversations. So it's
Really?
like we're
Yeah.
talking about how to talk about the
Mm.
arts and thinking about how we can reframe some of our thinking, basically, so that we can include more people and so that we can reach more people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is also something that in this time where the arts have been highlighted a little bit, that that we start to try and understand what artists' lives are about and why you do the art. And I think it's also important to connect with children in a way, so that they see that it's not. I almost have this idea, as if I wonder if sometimes if it feels so distant, if children, some children don't know how to reach that, or that there's not a way for them to reach that,
Mhm.
where you are, for example.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. I totally agree that it's getting especially children from thinking what is an artist to actually being able to do it and being skilled, actually, because it's not, there's a lot of creativity involved and a lot of charisma and confidence building. So that's one aspect of the education, is giving spaces, giving performance opportunities, giving courage, training
Mm.
courage in a way of giving them chances to perform and fail and then talk about it and get them back up and trying again. That's one part of it, is the psychological part. But the other part is actually the skills, to build the techniques and the skills that you need for music, for art, for dance, whatever it is. And a lot of times that does involve some rigor and
Yeah.
um, persistence, and that's an important part of the dialogue also, I think, is how can we change, on one hand, you want to make it more inclusive, but
Mm.
there's kind of a misconception that inclusive means it has to be watered down or it has to be quote unquote fun and easy. But I think there's a way that we can achieve both. We can
Mm.
open up access, but also, train rigorously. And maybe that rigor
Yeah.
isn't the same. It's probably not going to be the same kind of rigor that people used even 10 years ago, right? It's not going to
Mm.
be the same type of drilling and frontal instruction where the teacher's barking orders and the students are scared and following. But we have to, I think, this is now my personal take on it, but I really think we're looking for a new way
Yeah.
of making this type of education possible. And I definitely don't have all the answers, but I think it's an exciting idea to talk about those two things
But
together.
yeah, but I don't think we have to have the answers now, because I think this is something that will evolve. you know, that we see like with anything. But I also think, because I was trained as a teacher, and I know that there's in the time that I was trained, we had subjects, for example, how to teach maths, how to teach, you know, it was not just learning maths, but how to teach maths.
Yeah.
And I think it's with everything. If children are in a school and they have to learn maths, it depends very much on how this maths is taught. And it will be the same in music and art. If art can be you know, taught in schools and give children the opportunity, then of course you will have to have teachers that have you know, been trained specifically to instill the love of the art also for those children who will not become the musicians or the artists, you know.
Yeah, and that's the term differentiation now is a hot word in pedagogy. And how can you create a space in your classroom that's giving every, you know, you're communicating on multiple levels. Everything that you say should have two meanings. It should have a meaning for children that are not at a super high level, and it should also have a meaning for students that are. And a lot of times you have to really think about what kind of, you know, extensions on activities, and also being inclusive. You know, if you take a melody, for example, just one simple melody, do re mi fa, or whatever, you know, some child who doesn't yet understand how to put their fingers down on an instrument can just clap the rhythm or play with their bow.
Yeah.
And somebody who's been taking private violin lessons, you can give a challenge like, okay, play it 1/3 higher, play every note 3 higher than, you know. And
Yeah.
thinking of it's definitely more challenging for the teacher, but it's not impossible. And these are the type of methodologies that we have to start really developing, and making teachers also feel comfortable and ready to learn.
Yeah.
That's also important, that every teacher stands there and says, okay, I know a lot, but there's also a lot that I don't know, and I have to keep
Yeah.
learning.
And
Yeah.
I, for example, when my children were little, when my daughter started playing, I thought it would be great. They all have to play the piano. I just had this idea that they have to play a musical instrument. And she started off playing the piano. And actually, the piano teacher said to me that the piano is not suited for her, because she gave me a book to read. It was such a long time ago. And I did a little questionnaire in the book, and it turns out she has to play either a flute or a violin. And the moment she took the violin, and she was also a little bit older then, and the moment she took the violin, it just was so much easier, and so much easier for her to practice. And it was basically, it came down to it that she shouldn't be playing an instrument where she sits down. Now, this could be very old way or an old method, but it was actually so interesting for me that, you know, that I didn't think about that. I thought about music education, and then it turns out to be that way.
Yeah. I've experienced things like that in my own teaching
Really?
also, where I notice that, you know, some of it can be very emotional, where you notice the student just gravitates towards an instrument, but there are also physical considerations, you know, when there, you know, we look at musical aptitude, which is the natural tendencies of a human musically. And you can look at things like, can the human match pitch easily? I mean, we can all vocalize and we can all sing, but can a person with ease match a pitch and follow a melody? That's one thing. And people that are strong on that are better suited for instruments like the violin, where you don't have keys to help you know what note it is, and you kind of have to find it. And horn and things. And then there's things like, you know, the fine motor skills of the fingers, and there's things like the, you know, there are some people that are very adamant on people with big lips or strong facial muscles should go to trombone, or should go to brass instruments. So I think it's always, when I'm thinking of instrument selection, I think it's a three-way balance between, you know, what the aptitude is, what the child wants, and what the community needs, whatever that community is. Because it's also true that you know, when you're developing music programs and picking what instruments you're going to include is a pretty big process to think about. And sometimes, you know, it might be better to focus on fewer instruments, but have those ones be really high quality rather than just make it, you know, a free-for-all in the sense that anybody can play anything. And you have to think what the teachers are comfortable teaching. You have to think about all of these things, and give the students a voice. That's very important, I think, too, that the children have moments where they can choose. Of course, we don't want people trading in instruments every 2 weeks, but
Yeah.
there should be some moments, just like if you were to learn a language, you know, where you can make choices.
So how do you motivate your students, say, for example, to practice? Because I know for young children, that's a difficult thing, isn't it? To really get them in that habit of practice.
Difficult. I'm definitely still working on that, because what I do know is that this old, quote unquote, old school method of write down your practice time and your mom or dad signs it and brings it to the teacher, that's a little bit, I didn't even, me being the musician and the motivated student, I was really a good student when I was in school, and even I lied on those things. I wrote down false times and faked my mom's signature sometimes, so I don't really believe in that. But I think planning performances is the #1 way, because that gives something with a purpose. And assessments also. I mean, I call mine skills checks in my classroom, where, you know, they'll have to play part of a song, and then just like any other subject, there's you know, rhythm, intonation, and musicality as markers. So yes, planning performances, structuring your feedback, creating clear expectations, and for the really young ones, it's also a lot of parent education, honestly, because without the parent, you know, before the child, I feel until they're 10 or so, it's really a family affair. It's not so much an individual responsibility for the child.
Yeah, because they can also, you know, a child sometimes can also at a young age just decide, no, but, you know, they don't want to play this anymore because maybe a friend doesn't play an instrument or so, and then they say, no, they want to quit. And then it's the parents really who have to stick by it and motivate, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly. Sorry, I was going to say that you touched on something that's so true with the social motivations, and that's in many of my written documents about practicing and things that I give to the parents. It's whenever a child wants to quit, you really have to ask why. And if it's a social reason, that's more of a sign that you should try to stick it out for a few weeks, months at least, to see if it's, you know, we have to listen to musical reasons, but reasons of social, friends doing other things, and then reasons of this is too difficult. That's also a sign of maybe we need to work on it before we give up.
Yeah, I think always this is, it was a ballet teacher who said this to me when my children were little, is there's a difference between pushing a child and encouraging a child. And I think it's that, you know, I think parents sometimes are scared to encourage and see it as pushing, but it's more of encouraging and seeing and finding a way to keep going.
Yes, I agree. And I think you can, you know, encouragement has a lot to do with the type of language you're using. It has a lot to do with the rewards. I always preach consistency more than anything, because I see this over and over again in my personal life and in my professional life, that once you establish routines, it's quite easy to stick with them. I'm noticing that very much now, because it's the end of our school year, and, you know, there are just simple little tiny things that I do in my classes. For example, if I play da 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 da, the students have to stand up, and it always takes 3 months at the beginning of the year for them to follow the directions, and so many times they miss it or they keep talking through it. But if I'm really consistent and really happy when they do it correctly, then by the end of the year, it's so nice. We have a ritual, and it's a way of doing things that's yeah, it just becomes a part of your daily life. So with practicing and with getting over hard times, I always say to the parents, you know, attach it to something else that one does every day. Can you attach it to a meal, before or after a meal? Doing it right in the morning is one of my favorites. I happen to be a morning person, so I have to be nice for others that, or I like to practice in the morning. I'm not a complete morning person, but,
Yeah.
or attaching it to brushing your teeth, you know, so often people say practicing is like homework, and I say no, 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 it's like
Yeah.
keeping your teeth clean. Like if you don't do it, it's not going to feel good.
Mm.
That's what I say all the time.
But now do you teach children who just do music, or do you teach children, do you teach just on average music?
Well, both. I have some, I mean, if you look at Mitmach Musik, which is the program in refugee homes in Berlin, that's more as like children come there because they want to do music, so it's a bit more specialized. But I'm also just employed at an international school where it's just a part of the normal school day. We are trying to build a program that's a bit more special than maybe an average school,
Mm.
definitely. And we're also trying to develop a lot of transdisciplinary projects and integrating music more
Mm.
into the core of what the school is doing and relating it to the sciences, the mathematics, the technology.
Wonderful. Mm.
So that's a really big big project and idea, but we're starting slowly with little things like this year we had the physics class taking the string instruments and doing experiments on the sound waves, and you know,
Wow.
little things like that can
Amazing. Yeah.
start helping you know, I think the whole world is headed in a direction where things are very interconnected, so that should
Yeah.
definitely be reflected in the schooling as well, for sure.
Well, I spoke to a cellist, and he said that this is where he first heard the sound of the cello. It was a science experiment that somebody did with the cello, and that you know, sort of inspired him then to start playing the cello. So I think this is wonderful. And then, how many hours of music do these children do a
Well, they
week?
have two hours of required at the international school. They have two
Yeah.
hours of required lessons, and that's the state standard in Germany. And it's actually a 90-minute block, because 1 hour of lesson is really 45 minutes.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's 90 minutes once a week.
Mm.
And then we offer a program where we highly recommend that they choose at least one more music lesson. And there we have
Oh,
a catalog of more level-based groups. So during the school day, they meet as a class, as a grade level. So there's obviously very different levels.
yeah.
But then after school, before school, that's when you get the really advanced groups and
Mm.
also the beginner groups, because being an international school, I'm dealing with high mobility. So there's constantly people coming in and out, and we have
Oh,
to have
okay.
those structures in place. So
Mm.
that's talking about teaching with inclusion. That's something that I think in both walks of what I'm doing, working with refugees and also working in a high-powered international school, being inclusive is it's
Mm.
something that I have to think about every single day, every single activity that I'm planning, um,
Mm.
so that everyone finds a place that's right for
Mm.
them, and that the advanced students can be happy, and that the new students don't get scared or
Oh, yeah, yeah.
discouraged.
But isn't it wonderful also that uh, because this is also what I was talking to people about, or artists about, is this the fact that the moment you're in the orchestra together or a choir together, then this whole cultural, all the cultural differences or differences in you know, people are much more acceptant of each other, and for young children to have that, isn't that just a wonderful way to build these relationships between different cultures as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always talk about this, how it just gives, you know, I don't necessarily see music as a language, because I think it's there are too many different varieties within music to call it just one
Mm.
language. You know, if you look at how like Beethoven works, and then you look at how you know, Biggie Smalls is delivering hip hop. It's not really the same language,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a medium for communication,
Mm.
and it gives a common goal. It gives something to think about and something to do. It's not just getting in a room and like, let's think about things we have in common. It's you got to do
Yeah,
something with these people.
yeah.
And I mean, one of my best memories from high school was getting to know one of my best friends, Renee, and her family was Chinese American. So I didn't never think about the fact that she was Chinese. I just knew she played violin, and we were in a quartet together. And I remember, the first times I was going to her house, I was noticing, oh, their house is really different than my house. Like, wow, they decorate differently here. And, ooh, the lunch food is different. And, ooh, what's this
Yeah.
hot sauce? And it was the first time I tried sriracha hot sauce. But I
Okay.
didn't even, it's only, all these years later when I look back on that and I think, well, wow, that was so important,
Mm,
because it just gave me a way in without being hyper aware of like, ooh, I'm
mm,
going into a new culture. Ooh, this is so scary,
yeah.
because we were just playing like ridiculous, we were in Texas and we were playing like a Christmas hoedown. And the funny thing is, this friend of mine is getting married in December, and she's invited me to her wedding. And guess what we're playing after she says I do? She wants us to play this Christmas hoedown that we used to
Oh,
play when we
really?
were kids in the high school quartet. And I just
Oh,
think this is
wow.
so
Isn't this
amazing.
amazing?
It's so crazy.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing that it can be that connection then also
Yeah,
that brings that connection? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So
Wow.
I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I just know that it works. I just know that it's the way, and it takes a really long time, but it's worth it. So
Mm,
there's a lot of, it's a really difficult work, and it's not easy work, and it's work that leaves you doubting yourself and down and sad and
mm.
really not great all the time, but it's going through that process that I think it's very important. So
But I think it's especially for you as a teacher, and I do think if talking to artists also and hearing their stories about their teachers, I think teachers play such a important role also in music and art education. And what you are doing now is giving these children the opportunity, and they might not in this moment show appreciation, but I'm sure they will definitely make the links when they are out of school or later, or maybe this could be the starting, or you planting the seed of them loving music and appreciating music. So even if it's not somebody that will continue in music, that you have started that, and you have found a way, or try to find a way to create this love for the art in them.
yes, and that's when I think about my students that maybe won't become professionals, I always think that we want to give them the tools that they have. So we want to give them the tools to understand music in a meaningful way. And this
Mm.
is a bit of a lofty goal, but I also have the goal of giving them a basic understanding of harmony, to the point where, should they
Yeah,
want to pick up an instrument again, that it wouldn't be a horrible experience for them.
yeah, yeah.
So that's a pretty, because learning, the violin and then not picking it up and then trying it again, it's not so easy. Same thing with piano, same thing with any instrument. But I think, if we look at the way we teach instruments and we approach it in a more holistic way, where we're teaching about key signatures and tonalities, like understanding that if a song is in D major, that you could just play along the whole time on a D, and then you could throw in a five, you could understand tonic and dominant harmony, like, okay, now I need an A because it's the 5 chord, come back to the D, that you can kind of bring people along and give them a meaningful understanding. Plus,
Mm.
that's the way I think, when you look at pop and rock and other more contemporary genres, if you want to call them genre, if you want to
Yeah,
divide music like that, they're
yeah,
using
yeah.
a more, that basic approach to functional harmony. can really help people. And that's not something that's always taught in classical music. So that's something that when we talk about inclusion, and when I give this talk at the workshop, it's going to be a lot of psychological mindsets, but it's also going to be a lot of practical suggestions for what can I actually do in the way that I teach music that can bring people, give people a more long-lasting understanding.
I think that's wonderful, and your approach is wonderful, because I think also it's this idea, I think, that we think, as I said before, to be a musician, there's, of course, you have to practice for hours on end and have to get it perfect and to achieve something. But I think there has to be also this part where I can play the piano even though I don't play it perfectly and not 100%, but I can play it just because I love to play it. Or I can sing just for the fact that I'm singing, and not necessarily have to be able to have all these wonderful techniques. And I think there has to be that part as well, where it's almost as if, when I remember when I was a child, we could only take art if you can draw. And that's also a misconception. You can do art without being able to draw.
Yes, that's very similar, I think, to things like in music lessons where there's I don't know, is when there's a really difficult audition before you can even get your foot in the door. So especially at schools, we have to create these open spaces and mutual respect for different levels, but then we also want to have the avenues for really high achievement. And that's the process, and that's the question and the things that I want to keep working on. And I feel very fortunate to be in the position that I am, that I'm in the school doing this every day and working with I have a pretty great group of colleagues. So it's definitely not something to be done alone. Any type of art, music education, like in any institution that I found myself in, I've always tried to find the others that are teaching in the arts, and just try to stick together and share ideas and collaborate. There's nothing more powerful than two educators being in the same room together, I think, because that's when the ideas start really bouncing off. And if every lesson is held in a room with closed doors, and you're scared to let other adults watch you because you feel like they're judging you or whatever, that's not a good mindset, I think. So that's also a form of inclusion, I think, is if you're a teacher, you have to think, my room is really an open space, and it's a space where people can grow, and it's a space where I, as the educator, can also grow. So you have to kind of think of it like a garden, like that, and if a little bee is going to come in, and sit on your flowers, like, you can't get angry about it. You just have to let things, it's really difficult. It's truly very difficult to have that type of mindset, and I still struggle with it. But I also work in a classroom. My classroom at the school is a multifunction space, so it's not entirely my own. So this whole philosophy that I'm spewing off also comes from, I've got people entering all the time to do different things. And so it's kind of funny, and it really makes me think about what a classroom can be. And
but this is amazing that you keep thinking and thinking about that in that way, because I think that also improves how you teach and how you understand how to teach.
Well, I've always been, I don't know, I think I had a conductor. I think it was an orchestra conductor once when I was young, and I was at a music camp, and he was just telling us that we should all be like sponges, that we should just soak up everything that's around us. And I really always thought that was kind of a funny analogy, just imagining myself like a sponge. And especially, I'm still a young teacher. I've maybe had 5-6 years of experience, but it's things change fast, and the world is always changing. And you've got to be learning from people, and you have to be learning from students too, because they know things that you don't know. They know cultures, they have codes, and the way they speak to each other, the way they do things with each other. Like, you just have to be really receptive to all of the things that are floating around you. So being like a sponge a bit, I still think of that and try to embody it, I guess.
True, but it's true, yeah.
Yeah.
But Bridget, do you see in the future that this could be possible, that you are teaching at a school alongside the maths and the sciences and art being not necessarily just music, but that art as such would be as an important subject?
Yes and no. I'm an optimist by nature, so I'm gonna keep fighting for it. And the thing is, there's a difference between what's actually happening and then what people are labeling it as. So my head almost explodes every time I get an email that says core subjects, like, we're reducing the testing this year to the core subjects, or the pandemic's over, so we're going to focus on the core subjects. And I know that music's not in there, and it makes me want to throw the computer out the window every time. It makes me want to write angry emails to the administration. It just drives me insane. And I think that's going to be a long road of getting things branded like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the wrong place. I mean, it is an important focus, and the way we label things in the world is important. But I try to focus, instead of taking that energy to like throwing the computer or writing an angry mail, sometimes I really try to just take that, whatever I'm feeling, and send an email to the science teacher and say, hey, would you be open to doing a project together? And you kind of have to find, collaboration is not easy, and you're always going to find people that just can't do it or don't have the capacity. And sometimes I'm guilty of thinking I have too much capacity, so I'll ask everybody, and then in the end, you kind of have to choose little things to start growing and working on. But I think as long as the conversations are happening and the little, you kind of have to, I think it's not the job of the school head to say this is what we're doing. It's the job of the people actually doing the work to reach out to each other and form these little experiences. And I can't say that there's ever been a time where I've attempted some type of transdisciplinary thing that it's gone badly, that the science teacher or whatever thought, oh, this was a disaster. Usually there's a lot of curiosity around it, and maybe a bit of concern for time management and getting all of their curriculum milestones hit. But there's never, I wouldn't say there's ever been a feeling of this is horrible. So
well, this is maybe also a good idea, that music teachers start doing that, that collaborating with other subjects, that it is almost evident that then there is a connection.
Yes, I mean, and it's just like you said with that example of the student who came to music because he did a science experiment on the cello. It's every student has different interests, and the more you can connect things and relate things, the more well-rounded that's going to be. My favorite math teacher in high school, I remember all I wanted was for her to, I really liked her, and I was really challenged by math, and I kind of hated it, but her son also played in the orchestra with me. And when she came to my concerts, I was always so proud, just to show her, like, yes, I struggle a bit in your class. And I know I fell asleep on the desk during the test and you had to wake me up. This really happened to me once, I fell asleep on but now you're seeing me in my element, and like, don't you see me? Like, don't you see? And it's about seeing the kids and connecting with what they're connected with. And then you can make, and leaving this math teacher, I really liked math after I left her class, because she, weirdly through her son and through the whole community, she kind of found me where I was as a musician. And I always loved it when we were in the math class and she would like make a comment about, oh, you had, like, she knew I had an audition the night before or something, because the news spread or whatever. And that type of stuff always really motivated me, because I felt seen and I felt appreciated for who I was and what my interests were. So as the music teacher, you're going to get students that have other interests, and you just have to see them and you have to learn about them, and then bring music in, and they'll be much more open to it than
You are amazing, really. You are just the best person to go and talk at this conference because you see things just in such a different way. And
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I
Well, thank
agree
you.
with you.
Because I'm
Yeah.
scared. I'm still always a bit, presenting at a conference is a big deal to me, and it's I'm
No.
always a little bit nervous. So it's good, nice to hear,
Well,
encouraging
yeah,
things.
everything you've said to me so far, it's really so useful and inspiring. And I think if everybody, I just think if every person can do this, what you're doing, and if you're going to speak at a conference and you're going to inspire people to make one change or two changes in the way they teach music and the way they understand this, and also, like you say, I mean, I was also useless in maths and sciences, and but our school didn't have this opportunity, to have this an orchestra or things like that where you could play. And I think it's so important that we give every child now the opportunity or think about how we give children opportunities, because not everybody, will be excelling in maths and science. So there needs to be somewhere else where they could find their worth, and express themselves.
Yeah. And that gives confidence, which could then lead to, if they're recognized in the right way for their strengths,
Yeah.
it will lead them to get stronger as a whole. I've experienced that in my own life too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really nice thought.
Yeah. But Bridget, when are you going to this conference now? Or when is it happening? And
There's
tell me.
June 3rd through June 6th. And it's through the University of Rochester in New York, Performing Arts Department. So it's very easy to sign up. And there are so many inspiring sessions. Like really, I'm one of many. So it's happening over the whole weekend. For those in Europe, the times are a bit, it's a bit late night.
Yeah.
But, and there's a will, there's a way. And I encourage anyone out there to look into what's happening.
And it's all online.
Yes, it's all digital. So
oh, wonderful, great.
That's also in a way inclusive. It's in a way inclusive, in a way not. I don't know. That will be for the next interview. But
but I would love to speak to you afterwards so that we can recap about what happened there. Would that be okay?
Yes, and I think that the recording, like the conference, should also be recorded, so that could also be.
Okay. Yeah.
We could maybe find some interesting things there. But thank you so much.
That would be great. Yeah. No, I'm very fascinated because I'm very passionate about the fact that art should be taught in schools. It doesn't have to be just music. I mean, all forms of art, because I think everybody has the artistic quality inside them, and it needs to be there. And I think we can learn so much from doing art and from artists, and it should have its place. But hey, let's plant a seed and see what happens.
Yeah, I think theorizing is important, and then seeing what, like you said, just seeing what little moves we can make in our daily lives as educators, as advocates, whatever we're doing, to push the vision along that music, art is life and life is art, and everything else comes from there. So
I think of the think of the Wright brothers who flew for the first time, who built the aeroplane, and you think they were working in a bicycle shop and they had this dream, and it was not that long ago where they took their first flight, and now we're already flying all over the world. So it's possible. It's possible that art could be a core subject in the schools, I believe. If they could fly, then we could try and figure this one out.
Yes, and it is. I mean, it's starting to happen. There are certain parts of the world that are starting to get that verbiage, like get the language there, get it approved as part of their quote unquote core curriculum. Which that would be my, by the time I leave this earth, if music and art is a core subject and accepted that way across the world, I will be very happy.
I'm
That
with
will be
you.
enough.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, Bridget, I'm going to post this as soon as possible, and then I would love to hear from you afterwards as well. When you have
Great,
time.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, have a great day.
Have a great day too. And thank you so much for this wonderful work that you're doing.
Yes, yes, gladly. All right,
Okay.
bye-bye.
Bye.